It was a quiet morning in Southall Park on July 17, 2021. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky with soft colors. A man walking through the park stopped when he noticed a figure on a bench. She wasn't moving. At first, he thought she was asleep after a long night. But something about the way she lay there didn't seem right. He got closer and his heart sank. The woman wasn't breathing. She was cold, lifeless. This wasn't just a case of someone sleeping on a park bench. This was something far worse. Before we dive deeper into this tragic and haunting case, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to light. Now, let's get back to the story. Natalie Schotter was a 37-year-old mother of 3. She worked hard as part of the NHS, helping others in need. Her friends and family described her as a kind, loving person with a beautiful soul. She had a passion for giving back, working for charities, and supporting her community. Natalie was also a devoted mother, always putting her children first. But on the night of July 16, 2021, something went terribly wrong. She had been out with friends, enjoying the evening. Hours later, she was found lifeless on a park bench. What happened in those missing hours would uncover a dark and horrifying story. As the City of London settled into sleep on the night of July 16, 2021, one man wasn't resting. Muhammad Liow, a 35-year-old with a dark past, walked the paths of Southall Park. Liow was homeless, but he wasn't just wandering aimlessly. CCTV cameras captured him moving through the park with a purpose. Described in court as a predator, Liow had a history of troubling behavior. He had prior convictions for online sexual offenses, including attempts to groom young people. Prosecutors revealed he had disturbing conversations online, where he spoke about his twisted interests, even expressing pleasure at the idea of rape. That night, he was looking for someone vulnerable, someone he could exploit. Unfortunately, Natalie Schotter became his target. He walked up and down the paths of the park, his eyes scanning the benches and shadows. He paused when he saw Natalie. She was unconscious, slumped on a bench, completely unaware of the danger heading her way. Liow's intent was clear, and his actions that night would reveal the depths of his cruelty. The park was silent, and the streets nearby were empty. Midnight had come and gone, but Muhammad Liow wasn't leaving. The CCTV footage shows him pacing back and forth, watching Natalie from a distance. She was lying on the park bench, motionless. To him, she was the perfect victim, alone, unconscious, and defenseless. He moved closer. At first, his approach was slow, almost hesitant. But then his actions became disturbingly deliberate. He crouched beside her, checking to see if anyone else was around. The footage captured him repeatedly looking over his shoulder, scanning the park for witnesses. When he was satisfied that he was alone, he began to act. Liow carefully adjusted Natalie's limp body. Her arms hung loosely by her sides, and her head tilted back, completely unresponsive. She didn't fight back, didn't even flinch. She couldn't, she was unconscious. But that didn't stop him. Over the next 15 minutes, Liow committed acts of unimaginable cruelty. He assaulted her repeatedly, moving her body into different positions. At times, he would pause, as if considering his next move, before continuing the attack. The camera, though at a distance, captured enough to make the horror clear. This wasn't a quick or impulsive crime. It was calculated and methodical. Even though Natalie couldn't resist, the violence of the assault took a toll on her fragile body. Liow's actions overstimulated the delicate nerves in her throat, triggering a fatal cardiac arrest. By the time he was finished, Natalie was no longer breathing. He stood up, adjusted his clothes, and left her there as if nothing had happened. What's even more chilling is what happened next. Liow didn't run. He didn't seem panicked or worried about being caught. Instead, he calmly walked out of the park and drove to a nearby Shell gas station. There, he purchased cat food and a bottle of mouthwash, as though he were running everyday errands. For hours, Natalie's body remained on that bench. She was left alone in the dark, her life cruelly stolen. The man who attacked her went home and carried on with his night, as if nothing had happened. This is just the beginning of a chilling case. If you're invested in uncovering the truth, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share these stories and bring awareness to these important cases. Now, let's move on to the aftermath and what happened when the truth started to unravel. The morning of July 17, 2021, began like any other in Southall Park. Birds chirped in the trees, and the early sun cast a warm glow across the park. But as the city woke up, one passerby stumbled upon a scene they would never forget. On a park bench, they saw a woman, still and unresponsive. Her small frame looked out of place against the backdrop of a peaceful morning. At first, they thought she might be sleeping, but as they drew closer, the grim reality became clear. Her skin was pale, her body cold. Something terrible had happened here. The emergency services arrived quickly, but it was too late. Natalie Shada was already gone, and her death didn't seem natural. Police cordoned off the area, and investigators began their work. Forensic experts meticulously examined the scene, swabbing for DNA, photographing the bench, and collecting any evidence that might tell them what happened in the dark hours before her discovery. As they pieced together the puzzle, they found clues that would soon lead them to the horrifying truth. DNA samples from Natalie's body matched a man already known to the police, Muhammad Liow. His connection to the crime was undeniable, and his predatory behavior became a central focus of the investigation. The CCTV footage from the park, retrieved and analyzed, painted a chilling picture. It showed Liow approaching Natalie, manipulating her unconscious body, and violating her in the most horrific ways. The timeline was clear. Natalie was alive when he attacked her. Detectives were determined to uncover every detail of what happened that night. As they worked through the evidence, they found more troubling signs. Liow hadn't just acted on impulse. His behavior was calculated. After leaving Natalie to die, he had calmly gone about his night, making purchases at a gas station as if nothing had happened. News of Natalie's death spread quickly, shocking her family, friends, and community. To those who knew her, this was more than just a tragic loss. Natalie was a dedicated NHS worker, a loving mother of 3, and a beacon of kindness. The idea that her life had ended so violently and senselessly was almost impossible to process. For her family, especially her mother, Dr. Cass Shada-Wheatman, the aftermath was unbearable. A respected NHS cardiologist herself, she had spent decades saving lives. Now, she faced the devastating reality that no one had been there to save her daughter. The discovery of Natalie's body marked the start of a long and painful journey for those who loved her. But it also marked the beginning of a relentless pursuit of justice. A fight to hold her attacker accountable for the horrific crimes that had taken her life. The trial of Muhammad Liow began at the Old Bailey in October 2024, over 3 years after Natalie's tragic death. The courtroom was packed. Family members, journalists, and members of the public sat in silence, waiting to hear the horrifying details of what happened on that fateful night. The prosecution wasted no time in presenting their case. They described Liow as a predator, a man who prowled Southall Park with the intent of finding a vulnerable victim. The most crucial piece of evidence was the CCTV footage. As it played on a large screen in the courtroom, the entire room was gripped by its grim reality. The footage showed Liow approaching Natalie, who lay unconscious on the bench. His actions were deliberate, cold, and without hesitation. Jurors watched in shock as the footage revealed him violating her again and again. Some members of the jury wept openly, while others turned their faces away, unable to watch. Prosecutor Alison Morgan described the events in chilling detail, explaining how Liow's repeated assaults overstimulated the nerves in Natalie's throat, causing a fatal cardiac arrest. She told the jury, Natalie was not dead when this began. She was unconscious, defenseless, and alive. The actions of the defendant took her life. Liow's defense argued that Natalie's death might have occurred before the assault, suggesting that she had consumed alcohol and other substances earlier in the night. They claimed that there was no way to prove she was alive during the attack. But the prosecution was prepared. Toxicology reports showed that while Natalie had consumed alcohol and inhaled amyl nitrate, also known as poppers, these substances were not lethal. The prosecution argued that her unconscious state made her vulnerable, but it was Littow's actions that caused her death. The defense also tried to paint the assault as consensual. They claimed that Natalie had offered Liow sexual favors in exchange for money. But this claim fell apart under the weight of the evidence. The CCTV footage clearly showed Natalie was incapable of consenting. Her body was limp, her movements non-existent. Throughout the trial, Natalie's family sat in the gallery, enduring the unbearable pain of hearing the details of her final moments. Her mother, Dr. Cass Schade-Weitman, was often seen holding back tears as the prosecutor described her daughter's suffering. The turning point came when Littow's DNA was matched to swabs taken from Natalie's body. It was undeniable evidence linking him to the crime. Combined with the CCTV footage, the timeline of events became crystal clear. The prosecution ended their case with a powerful statement. Muhammad Liow did not just take advantage of Natalie's vulnerability, he exploited it in the worst way imaginable. He left her to die alone on a park bench after taking her life in the most brutal manner. The courtroom fell silent as the jury deliberated. The evidence was overwhelming, but the decision still carried immense weight. As the trial continued, one question remained on everyone's mind. Would justice be served for Natalie and her family? The courtroom has revealed shocking truths, but the fight for justice isn't over yet. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay with us as we continue this harrowing journey. While the trial brought horrifying details to light, there was another story unfolding outside the courtroom, a mother's relentless fight for justice. Dr. Cass Schade-Weitman, a respected NHS cardiologist, had spent 45 years saving lives. But now, she found herself fighting to honor her daughter's memory and ensure no other family would endure the pain she had felt. From the very beginning, Dr. Weitman refused to accept the initial conclusion that Natalie's death was simply unexpected. When the police hesitated to treat the case as a crime, she pushed back, demanding answers and refusing to let Natalie's death be swept under the rug. Dr. Weitman publicly criticized what she called a culture of indifference and misogyny within the system. 2 police officers allegedly dismissed Natalie's case when a friend reported concerns about her welfare earlier that night. They told her nothing could be done, Dr. Weitman later revealed. That callousness may have cost my daughter her life. For the next 3 years, Dr. Weitman worked tirelessly, turning her grief into determination. She became a voice for Natalie and a beacon of hope for others who had lost loved ones to violence. She worked closely with lawyers, gave interviews to the press, and attended every court hearing. She wouldn't rest until the truth was exposed. In one emotional interview, Dr. Weitman described Natalie as a beautiful soul who had so much more to give. She was a mother of 3, an NHS worker, and a kind, compassionate person. She didn't deserve this. No one does. Her efforts didn't stop at seeking justice for Natalie. Dr. Weitman began advocating for changes in how vulnerable women are protected in public spaces. She called for better training for police officers, increased security in parks, and greater accountability in handling cases of violence against women. Despite her tireless work, the journey was emotionally exhausting. Each day in court, Dr. Weitman sat with Natalie's siblings, holding back tears as prosecutors described the horrific details of her daughter's death. The CCTV footage, the DNA evidence, and the toxicology reports all pointed to one man, but hearing it again and again was almost unbearable. Dr. Weitman wasn't alone in her fight. Friends and supporters rallied around her, holding vigils for Natalie and lighting candles in her memory. Community members left flowers and notes on the bench where Natalie was found, turning it into a symbol of remembrance and resilience. Her perseverance paid off. The evidence against Muhammad Liow was overwhelming, and the trial was nearing its end. But for Dr. Weitman, this was more than just a legal battle. It was about ensuring Natalie's story was never forgotten and that her death wasn't in vain. Here's a question for you, our audience. If you were in Dr. Weitman's position, how would you channel your grief into action? Do you think the justice system does enough to protect vulnerable people and bring predators to justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Dr. Wheatman once said, "Justice won't bring Natalie back, but it can stop this from happening to someone else." Her fight wasn't just for her daughter. It was for all women who deserve to feel safe, even in the darkest corners of the world. Drop your answers in the comment section and let us know how you feel about this case and the fight for justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. December 13th was a day that Natalie's family had been waiting for, a day that could finally bring some closure. The courtroom was packed as the jury returned to deliver their verdict. The air was heavy with tension, every face focused on the judge. For Natalie's family, this moment was the culmination of years of pain and perseverance. Her mother, Dr. Cass Shada Wheatman, sat in the front row of the gallery, holding back tears as she waited for the words that would determine whether justice would be served. As the judge began to speak, the room fell silent. "Muhammad Liow," he said, his voice steady and firm, "you have been found guilty of the manslaughter and rape of Natalie Schott." The words hung in the air, their weight felt by everyone in the room. There was no reaction from Liow. He sat motionless, staring ahead, as if the verdict meant nothing to him. But for Natalie's family, it meant everything. The quiet sobs of her mother and siblings could be heard as relief washed over them. After years of fighting for answers, they finally had justice. The judge went on to describe Liow's crimes as predatory and heinous. He spoke of Natalie's vulnerability that night and how Liow had exploited it in the most horrific way. "Your actions were deliberate and cruel," the judge said. "You left a defenseless woman to die after inflicting unimaginable suffering." The sentencing was scheduled for a later date, but the verdict itself was a victory for Natalie's family. Outside the courtroom, Dr. Wheatman spoke to the press, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We are grateful for the jury's decision," she said. "While nothing will bring Natalie back, we now know that the man who took her from us will face the consequences of his actions." She also spoke about her daughter's legacy, calling her a kind and loving person who gave so much to others. Dr. Wheatman expressed her hope that this case would inspire change, ensuring better protection for women and harsher penalties for predators. As the courtroom emptied, Natalie's family lingered for a moment, holding each other close. This wasn't the end of their grief, but it was a step toward healing. For them, the verdict was not just a legal decision. It was a recognition of the life Natalie had lived and the injustice she had suffered. Muhammad Liow's guilt was no longer a question. He would spend many years behind bars, and Natalie's story would not be forgotten. For her family, justice had been served, and her memory would live on. Now, we turn to you. What do you think about the verdict and the justice system's handling of Natalie's case? Do you believe enough was done to protect her? And what changes would you like to see to prevent tragedies like this? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Justice has been delivered, but Natalie's story reminds us of the work that still needs to be done. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us as we continue to tell these important stories. Let's honor Natalie's life and ensure her voice is never silenced. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more true crime stories